Nneka, cursed with eternal beauty but a heart growing colder each day, finds hope in Uzo, a kind-hearted young man whose love begins to melt her icy heart. Just as it seems the curse might be broken, a dark stranger arrives, threatening to tear them apart and plunge Nneka back into eternal despair. As Uzo faces the stranger in a deadly duel, the fate of Nneka's heart and her very soul hangs in the balance. Will love conquer the darkness, or will the curse claim Nneka forever? The story unfolds with twists that keep you on the edge of your seat, right to the very end. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Kindly subscribe, like, comment, share, and let us dive into this interesting story. Before I start, let me know in the comment section, if this was you, would you choose to be young and beautiful forever, or break the curse and age? Let me know your thoughts. Nneka lived in a small village called Umuike. She was known throughout the land for her beauty. Her skin was smooth as silk, her eyes sparkled like the morning sun, and her hair was as dark as the night sky. But there was something strange about Nneka that no one could explain. She never seemed to age. Year after year, while her friends grew older, Nneka stayed the same, as young and beautiful as the day she turned 18. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, an old woman visited Nneka's home. She was hunched over, with a wrinkled face and hair as white as snow. She carried a wooden staff that clicked against the ground with every step. The villagers whispered that she was a witch, but Nneka welcomed her in. The old woman looked at Nneka with eyes full of sorrow and said, "Child, you are cursed. The beauty you hold will never fade, but your heart will grow colder with every year that passes. One day, your heart will turn to ice, and you will be alone forever." Nneka was frightened. She had always wondered why she never aged, but she never imagined it was a curse. She begged the old woman for help. "There is only one way to break the curse," the old woman said. "You must find someone who loves you truly, with a heart warmer than the coldness in yours. But be warned, if you fail to find this love before your heart turns to ice, the curse will be eternal." Nneka was determined to break the curse. She knew she could not live with a heart of ice. But as the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, she felt her heart growing colder. No matter how many suitors came to win her love, none could warm her heart. One day, a young man named Uzo arrived in Umuike. He was kind and gentle, with a smile that made everyone feel at ease. Uzo had heard of Nneka's beauty and the curse that plagued her. He decided to visit her, hoping that his love might be the one to break the spell. When Uzo saw Nneka for the first time, his heart skipped a beat. He had never seen anyone so beautiful, but he could sense the sadness in her eyes. Nneka, too, felt something stir within her when she met Uzo. It was a feeling she hadn't felt in years, a tiny spark of warmth in her cold heart. As the days passed, Uzo and Nneka spent more and more time together. Uzo told Nneka stories that made her laugh, and he listened to her fears and dreams. Slowly, Nneka began to feel the coldness in her heart fade, replaced by the warmth of Uzo's love. But just as Nneka started to believe that she might finally break the curse, something terrible happened. A stranger arrived in the village, a man with dark eyes and a cruel smile. He claimed to be Nneka's true love and said that he alone could break the curse. Nneka was confused. She didn't trust the stranger, but his words had a strange power over her. The stranger's presence disturbed Uzo. He could see the fear in Nneka's eyes whenever the stranger was near. Uzo tried to protect Nneka, but the stranger was always one step ahead. He began to whisper lies into Nneka's ear, making her doubt Uzo's love. Nneka's heart, which had begun to warm, started to grow cold once more. She became distant from Uzo, avoiding him and spending more time with the stranger. Uzo was heartbroken. He couldn't understand why Nneka was pushing him away, but he refused to give up on her. One night, Uzo had a dream. In his dream, the old woman who had cursed Nneka appeared to him. She told him that the stranger was not a man, but a dark spirit sent to ensure that the curse would never be broken. She warned Uzo that the only way to save Nneka was to face the spirit and defeat it, but it would be a dangerous battle, and Uzo might lose his life. When Uzo woke up, he knew what he had to do. He loved Nneka more than anything, and he was willing to risk his life to save her. He confronted the stranger, challenging him to a duel. The entire village gathered to watch, their hearts heavy with fear. The duel was fierce. Uzo fought with all his strength, but the stranger was powerful, his dark magic making him almost impossible to defeat. Just as it seemed that Uzo was about to lose, he remembered the warmth of Nneka's love. He focused all his energy on that feeling, letting it guide his hand. With one final blow, Uzo struck the stranger down. As the stranger fell, his body dissolved into a dark mist that disappeared into the night. The village was silent, holding its breath as Uzo stood over the place where the stranger had fallen. Nneka, watching from the crowd, felt something shift within her. The coldness that had gripped her heart for so long melted away, replaced by a warmth so strong it brought tears to her eyes. She rushed to Uzo, her heart pounding with love and gratitude. But just as Nneka reached Uzo, he collapsed to the ground, his face pale. The dark spirit had wounded him deeply, and Uzo was fading fast. Nneka cradled him in her arms, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't leave me," Nneka whispered, her voice trembling. "You broke the curse. You saved me." Uzo looked up at Nneka, his eyes full of love. "As long as you are free, I will never truly leave you," he said, his voice weak. "Live your life, Nneka. Be happy." With those words, Uzo closed his eyes, and the warmth in Nneka's heart turned into a cold, empty void. Nneka wept for days, unable to believe that Uzo was gone. The village mourned with her, but no words could ease her pain. The curse was broken, but at a price too high to bear. Nneka's heart, once warm with love, was now frozen with grief. But even as Nneka mourned, she felt something stirring within her. It was a spark of hope, a tiny flame that refused to be extinguished. She realized that Uzo's love had left a mark on her heart, one that could never be erased. And so, with Uzo's memory in her heart, Nneka vowed to live on, to honor the love they had shared. She knew that her journey was not over, that there were still battles to be fought, and mysteries to be unraveled. But as Nneka prepared to face the challenges ahead, she couldn't shake the feeling that the dark spirit's influence was not entirely gone. A shadow loomed over Umuike, and Nneka knew that her greatest battle was yet to come. Nneka stood at the top of the hill, gazing down at the quiet village of Umuike. The wind blew softly, carrying the scent of the earth and the distant sound of the river. Uzo's keepsake, a small carved figure he had given her during one of their peaceful walks, rested in her hand. It was the last connection she had to him, and she held it tightly, her heart heavy with grief. But Nneka knew she couldn't stay on this hill forever. Uzo had given everything to protect her, to save her from the curse that had plagued her for so long. Now, it was up to her to honor his memory and ensure that his sacrifice was not in vain. With a deep breath, she wiped away her tears and began the descent back to the village. As she walked through the narrow paths, the villagers watched her in silence. They had seen the battle, witnessed the dark stranger fall, and knew of Uzo's bravery. They respected Nneka, but there was also fear in their eyes, fear of what might come next. The curse was broken, but the darkness that had once threatened her was still out there, lurking in the shadows. Nneka returned to her hut, the place that had been her refuge and prison for so many years. The inside was as she had left it, simple, yet filled with memories of a life she had longed to escape. She looked at the small bed in the corner, where Uzo had once lain, wounded but determined. His courage had sparked something in her, something she hadn't felt in years: hope. That night, Nneka couldn't sleep. The moonlight filtered through the small window, casting shadows on the walls. She tossed and turned, her mind racing with thoughts of what she should do next. The curse may have been lifted, but she knew that her journey was far from over. There were still questions that needed answers, and she could feel a new power within her, a power that needed to be understood. The next morning, Nneka awoke with a sense of purpose. She packed a small bag with essentials, food, water, and a few herbs she had gathered from the forest. She wrapped Uzo's keepsake in a cloth and placed it carefully in the bag. Then, without looking back, she left her hut and began to walk towards the edge of the village. As she walked, the villagers whispered among themselves. Some were curious, others worried, but no one stopped her. They knew Nneka was on a new path, one that only she could follow. The sun was rising, casting a golden light over the fields, and Nneka felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. She didn't know where this path would lead, but she knew she had to follow it. Nneka traveled for days, moving through forests, across rivers, and over hills. She avoided villages, preferring the solitude of nature as she tried to make sense of the changes within her. She could feel the old woman's magic lingering inside her, not as a curse, but as a force she needed to control. Uzo's voice echoed in her mind, reminding her of his love and strength. She drew on that strength as she continued her journey. One evening, as Nneka sat by a small fire she had built, a rustling in the bushes nearby caught her attention. She stood up, her heart pounding, and reached for a stick to defend herself. But what emerged from the bushes wasn't a wild animal, it was a young girl, no more than 10 years old, with wide, frightened eyes. "Please," the girl whispered, her voice trembling. "Help me." Nneka's heart softened as she looked at the girl. She was thin and ragged, her clothes torn and dirty. Without hesitation, Nneka knelt down and reached out her hand. "Come here," she said gently. "You're safe now." The girl hesitated for a moment, then slowly stepped forward and took Nneka's hand. Nneka pulled her close and wrapped her in a blanket she had carried in her bag. The girl clung to her, shivering with fear and exhaustion. "What's your name?" Nneka asked softly, brushing the girl's hair away from her face. "Ada," the girl replied, her voice barely audible. Nneka smiled. "Ada, you're going to be okay. I'm going to take care of you." As Ada fell asleep in Nneka's arms, Nneka's mind raced with questions. Who was this girl? Where had she come from? And why was she alone in the middle of the forest? Nneka knew that her journey had just taken a new turn, one that she hadn't expected. But she also knew that she couldn't leave this girl to fend for herself. The next morning, Nneka and Ada set off together. Nneka carried the girl on her back, determined to find a safe place for her. As they walked, Ada began to open up, telling Nneka about her village, which had been attacked by a band of raiders. Ada had managed to escape, but her family had been taken, and she had been wandering alone ever since. Nneka listened with a heavy heart. She knew what it felt like to lose everything, to be alone and afraid. But she also knew that Ada was strong, just like Uzo had been. Nneka promised herself that she would do everything in her power to protect this girl and help her find her family. As they continued their journey, Nneka noticed something strange. The closer they got to the next village, the more she could feel a dark presence in the air. It was faint, but it was there, a lingering sense of danger that made her uneasy. Nneka's instincts told her to be cautious, but she also knew that they couldn't turn back now. Ada needed help, and Nneka was determined to find it. When they finally reached the village, Nneka was struck by how quiet it was. The houses were small and simple, but there was no sign of life. No children playing, no women working in the fields, no men gathering around the village square. The only sound was the wind rustling through the trees. Nneka set Ada down gently and looked around, her senses on high alert. She could feel the dark presence growing stronger, and she knew that something was very wrong. "Stay close to me, Ada," Nneka whispered. "We need to be very careful." As they walked through the empty streets, Nneka's heart pounded in her chest. She had faced many dangers before, but this felt different. The village was too quiet, too still, and Nneka could feel eyes watching them from the shadows. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of them, emerging from one of the houses. It was a woman, her face pale and her eyes hollow. She looked at Nneka with a mix of fear and desperation. "Please," the woman whispered, her voice shaking. "You have to leave. It's not safe here." Nneka's heart sank. She had been right, there was something very wrong with this village. But she couldn't leave without helping these people, not after everything she had been through. "What's happening here?" Nneka asked, her voice firm. The woman looked around nervously before answering. "There's a curse," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A dark spirit has taken over the village. It feeds on our fear, and it won't stop until we're all gone." Nneka felt a chill run down her spine. She had thought that the curse was behind her, but now it seemed that another one had taken its place. She knew that she couldn't leave these people to suffer, not when she had the power to help them. "I can help," Nneka said, her voice strong. "But I need to know everything. Tell me about this spirit." The woman hesitated, then nodded slowly. "It came out of nowhere, just after the last full moon. It's been haunting us ever since, taking people one by one. We tried to fight it, but it's too strong. The village elders say it's an ancient spirit, one that feeds on pain and suffering." Nneka clenched her fist. She had faced dark spirits before, but this one sounded different, more powerful, more dangerous. She knew that she couldn't fight it alone, but she also knew that she couldn't walk away. Not now, not after everything she had been through. "I need to see the village elders," Nneka said, determination in her voice. "They need to tell me everything they know about this spirit." The woman nodded again, her eyes filled with a glimmer of hope. "Follow me," she said, turning towards one of the larger houses at the edge of the village. "I'll take you to them." As they walked, Nneka felt Ada's small hand slip into hers. She squeezed the girl's hand reassuringly, her heart filled with resolve. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she knew that she had to face it. For Ada, for Uzo, and for the people of this village. When they reached the elder's house, Nneka took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air was heavy with the scent of burning herbs, and the room was dimly lit by a single candle. The elders sat in a circle, their faces etched with worry and fear. Nneka stepped forward, her voice steady. "I'm here to help," she said. "But I need to know everything about this spirit. How did it come here? And how can we stop it?" The eldest of the group, a man with a long, white beard, looked at Nneka with weary eyes. "You are brave to come here, child," he said slowly. "But this spirit is not like any other. It is ancient, powerful, and filled with rage. It has been awakened by something dark and terrible. And it will not rest until it has consumed us all." Nneka's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the weight of the elder's words, the fear that hung in the air like a heavy fog. But she also knew that she couldn't give up, not when there were lives at stake. "There must be a way to stop it," Nneka insisted. "There has to be." The elder sighed deeply. "There is one way," he said. "But it is dangerous, and it requires great sacrifice. The spirit can only be banished by someone who is willing to give their life to save the village." Nneka's breath caught in her throat. She had faced many dangers before, but this was different. This was a battle she might not survive. But as she looked into the eyes of the elders, she knew that she had no choice. She had to try. "I'll do it," Nneka said, her voice firm. "Tell me what I need to do." The elder looked at her with a mixture of sadness and respect. "You are brave, child," he said softly. "But be warned, once you start down this path, there is no turning back. You must go to the sacred forest, where the spirit was awakened. There, you will find a way to banish it. But be careful, the spirit will do everything in its power to stop you." Nneka nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. She knew that this would be the greatest challenge she had ever faced, but she also knew that she couldn't walk away. Not now, not when so many lives depended on her. "I'm ready," Nneka said, her voice strong. "Tell me where to go." The elder gave her a small, sad smile. "Follow the river," he said. "It will lead you to the sacred forest. But be careful, child. The spirit is watching, and it will try to stop you at every turn." Nneka nodded and turned to leave, but not before squeezing Ada's hand one last time. "Stay with the elders," she whispered to the girl. "I'll be back soon." Ada looked up at her with wide, frightened eyes. "Be careful, Nneka," she whispered. "I don't want to lose you too." Nneka's heart ached as she looked at the girl. She had grown so attached to Ada, and the thought of leaving her behind was almost too much to bear. But she knew that she had to do this, for Ada, for the village, and for herself. "I'll be back," Nneka promised, her voice strong. "I won't let this spirit win." With that, she turned and walked out of the elder's house, her heart heavy with determination. She knew that this would be the greatest challenge she had ever faced, but she also knew that she had to succeed. The fate of the village, and the life of everyone she cared about, depended on it. Watch out for part 2. Thank you so much guys for watching to this point. Subscribe to this channel, like, comment down below, and share to your family and friends. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, so that whenever I post you will be among the first people to know. See you next time. Bye.